right. Welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim of Jehovah's Witnesses that they're living in a modern day spiritual paradise, thanks to the governing body in upstate New York. I am your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, but most importantly, a kid that was raised in Jehovah's Witnesses in the 70s and 80s. And as I like to do here, and I'm going to really emphasize it this week, we try to have some fun. We try to heal. We try to explore subjects that never got talked about when we were Jehovah's Witnesses, or if we are a Jehovah's Witness who's listening in. Just be aware that some of these things could trigger people. There's sarcasm, there's humor, there's my own brand of bizarre, because it all comes out of my head and through my own personal observations and experiences as a Jehovah's Witness. But please know this, we're not trying to offend anyone. We're really not, even if the sarcasm and humor goes off the rails at times, and it does, because, well, it's Jehovah's Witnesses, and this is a spiritual paradise, right? Thus the logo of this podcast of a watchtower with a giant pile of shit on top. So let's jump in this week, and I want to say Happy New Year. At the time this particular episode will drop, it is now officially, we are in year 109, 109 years into the last days. Just a reminder, try to get it out of the way early. We're now 109 years into the last days. So Happy New Year. Happy New Year out there to all those who have stumbled upon this little show. So I got to say, we're going to tackle a weird subject this week, and there's a reason it's on my mind. Just some observations from earlier this week surrounding Christmas, the holiday season. It always brings out the best in me and triggers some memories and some thoughts. So before I even dig into this subject, though, before I even do it, I'm going to emphasize the trigger warning that I typically do at the start of each episode. This one's tough, and it's bizarre. Look, I'm going to say it from the outset. I'm going to be all over the board on this one. Why? Because I don't think my own mind, my own brain has been able to grasp exactly how, what, or why I feel the way I do about this particular subject. It's so strange in so many ways. There's a lot of negative emotion. There's not a lot of positive, if I'm being honest. It's a strange subject. And so I suspect that I'll be a little all over the board as I try to organize my thoughts as we go. And I just want to say, in terms of triggers, this one's a big one. To get it out of the way early, I want to boldly state that nothing is more precious than the innocence of childhood. For a Jehovah's Witness kid, and now possibly an adult listening in on this little podcast, we are often dealing with horrendous emotional wounds or scars. I want to say that they're going to go away. Some do, some don't. Childhood is incredibly precious and incredibly vulnerable. Many who might be listening are being shunned by parents and grandparents simply because they saw through the lies taught by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. Or maybe they made one bad decision in their youth. I personally want to say I don't have words for how awful, cruel, and unnatural it is to shun your family in this life. It is sickening. It is evil in my mind. That alone should give every single soul on this planet pause regarding this cult. The fact that they do that. Shunning is a subject that needs several episodes. We're not going to tackle it much here. See past episodes, in fact. But for any other human being giving any consideration to dividing a family, let me just say that I personally think it's evil, period. It's cruel at a level that's hard to put words to. So just know that I'm coming from that base as I discuss this particular subject of childhood and parenting. And I want to say that I'm not likely to be too sarcastic or to point out some of the more humorous ironies that I typically do on this particular subject because this one really upsets me. That's just being candid. It's likely this is going to trigger some memories and pain for some of us that were raised as Jehovah's Witnesses, but I still want to tackle it. I want to talk about it. So, to begin, first and foremost, a gigantic virtual hug to everyone that may be victimized by a childhood in Jehovah's Witnesses, who may be listening that are being shunned or ignored by their mom and dad, by their grandparents. I can't tell you how much you deserve that hug and how you don't deserve what you're going through or what the pain and the memories that you deal with. What we lost or are losing out on in the very moment I'm saying this podcast cannot be replaced in this life. You can't go to the store and just buy love from parents or from people that are continuing to shun us because we don't believe in 8 guys in New York that are never going to meet us. We're never going to know. So I am so sorry. I try not to get moved to tears, but if you've listened long enough, you know sometimes I do. So hugs from me to you. Big time. I want to tackle some observations I've made throughout my lifetime on this subject of parenting and childhood among Jehovah's Witnesses. And I sense this subject will bring out the worst in me. I'm as human as they get. My skepticism, my criticism, my cynicism, my sarcasm, a lot of isms. It's a slightly dark subject for me on many fronts. And I think you'll see why I feel that way. And undoubtedly, many of those listening are working through some emotions, even as they think of some things that have happened to them. But let's look at parenthood, being a parent as a Jehovah's Witness. Even in my time as a Jehovah's Witness, I found myself very intrigued by the way some Jehovah's Witness parents thought or lived their lives. Now, I was fortunate. I had a wonderful mother. I still have my mother. I did not have a father. She was a single mother. Subject for another show. Some of the stuff that we went through as Jehovah's Witnesses, very strange stories. Some of them good, some kindness. Some of them bad, not so good. But I've always been intrigued as I observed, and maybe I was hypersensitive to it because I didn't have your standard family. I had a single mother. I'd watch other parents, and this continued all the way through to adulthood when I had silver hair as an elder. And I ask you, if you're listening, is there a more important responsibility given to a human being in any walk of life than being a parent? To raise healthy children, to make sure they stay safe, to mold them into good decision makers, to give them the confidence to believe in themselves as they go out and enter this evil world ruled by Satan, to make sure they get a head start on this world, that they're educated, that they're nurtured. On and on it goes, right? Is there anything more important than that in the human experience? If you have had a child, or you have children, or you're planning children, or God forbid, and I can't get emotional this early, you've lost children. Is there anything more important than that? I can say that for myself, I loved my childhood with all its challenges. I was lucky with my mother. And I could tell you that I became the father to one son, biological son. It's by far and away the most important day of my life. I remember holding him, of which I can no longer do since he's about 6'1" and 30. But I remember holding him in my arms and thinking, is this real? This little person, this little face looking up at me depends on me for everything, to keep him safe, to mold his little mind and heart, to teach him, to feed him, to keep him alive. It is awe-inspiring. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. It's absolutely incredible when you look into the eyes of a baby, particularly if it's yours. And it's very humbling. Is there anything more important than that in this world? And so let's dig in, because this is only more important for anyone that is a Jehovah's Witness parent. In fact, for a Jehovah's Witness parent, there is nothing, and I mean nothing more important. Teaching your child all things Jehovah and his organization is a matter of life or death. Those are not my words. That is the belief and teaching of Jesus' chosen guys in New York. To raise your child to be a baptized Jehovah's Witness is your chief responsibility in this life as a parent. I tried to dismiss the fact that I helped create this little person, this little guy, only to thrust him, and again, here's a peek into my brain, only to thrust my only son and this little person into some cosmic, deadly argument between two invisible guys neither of us can see. That by bringing him into the fight for the universe, I could lose him if he didn't pick the right side and join in the fight. Or that my entire purpose on this earth was to now make sure I did everything possible to teach him to pick the right guy, Jehovah or Satan. Never mind that his little brain couldn't see both characters were bizarre, invisible bullies who hurt kids. That's right, both of them do. But the weight of that job as a parent was truly heavy. It's heavy. I have nothing but respect for parents. None of us come out into this world with a manual on how to do this. We figure it out as we go. Would you agree? So many mistakes. You try to minimize those mistakes. Letting them eat ice cream every night's one mistake. Letting them get involved in a lifestyle that's deadly and dangerous is quite a different one. But as parents, we have no idea. Parenthood as a Jehovah's Witness is truly like nothing else. Aside from all the daily things and the daily program and the constant barrage from the 8 guys in New York, you're also protecting this little ball of goo you created. And you have this additional pressure to make sure that they choose the right invisible bully in the world's biggest schoolyard brawl. It's heady. It's heady when you think about it. And to be honest with you, it's scary. It's a little scary. I try to tell kids, my own, that upon their birth, my life's never the same. I never have a worry-free day anymore. I never have a worry-free hour. Doesn't matter if they're little or they're small. It's scary. But as a Jehovah's Witness, you're even more worried because Satan's out to get them. And if Jehovah doesn't like what they're doing, he's out to get them. I mean, unpack it. So let's just get this out of the way. And here comes the blunt, bold statement that is sure to offend someone, possibly. I don't know. The statement is this: the vast majority of Jehovah's Witness parents fail. They fail miserably. Nowhere is this more apparent than in modern times as you look at the numbers among Jehovah's Witnesses. And that failure, it's weird. It's weird to me. Aside from the fact that the entire life and belief system of a Jehovah's Witness is bizarre, parents seem to have all of Jehovah's tools. They have Jesus sitting up there watching all of us in the heavens. They have his chosen 8 guys in upstate New York. We have books, we have videos, we have carts, we have assemblies, and so much more. And yet a Jehovah's Witness parent, on average, completely bombs at the most important job they will ever have. No, it's not your neighbors or the strangers at the doors as you circle around a neighborhood on a Saturday. They aren't the most important. Your own children are the most important, even by Jehovah's Witness standards. And Jehovah made it easy, right? Don't forget this point. Here's a key one: that with children, Jehovah God handed them a ready-made disciple. Likely in most families, several ready-made disciples, multiple kids born of the womb of the mother, and right into Jehovah's organization. Jehovah handed you Your own disciples didn't have to go knock on doors, didn't need that coffee break at Starbucks, didn't need any of that stuff. He handed you disciples. And most Jehovah's Witness parents fail in a completely controlled environment, their own homes, the weekly visits to the Kingdom Hall, the car group and service, the assemblies and conventions fail. They fail. How do you take a disciple Jehovah handed you and said, by all means, above everything else, make sure that one, the little one, becomes one of my people? Why do so many parents fail? How does it happen? So now for the questions that have long intrigued me in my own observations throughout life as a witness, my own, as I often state here, my own bizarre thoughts, my own bizarre observations on this subject of parenthood among Jehovah's people. Here's a few of them that have never left my mind. They continue in my mind to this day when I see Jehovah's Witnesses, now that I'm long out of that organization, almost 14 years. I still know people there and still love them from afar. They don't talk to me. I'm shunned. I'm shunned. But I look at them and I think, here's the questions that I think of. And they're not different from the questions I thought of as an elder, going to countless people's families' homes, trying to keep marriages and families together. Here they are. Why do they go through life looking at this failure with their kids like it's no big deal? How is that even possible? Why do these parents still associate with their kids that have openly rejected Jehovah's organization? Why do they act that because their kids never got baptized, it's all still okay and they can associate with them? Huh? Didn't the fact that their kids are not getting baptized indicate what a failure they were as a Jehovah's Witness parent? And trust me, I'm throwing myself under the bus. I'm not judging others. I, myself, was a failure as a Jehovah's Witness parent. My son never believed in it. I've got hilarious stories. One quick one, having a Bible study with him. We're covering King David. We're covering the story where he's looking down at Bathsheba taking a bath and he gets all horny and he decides he's going to take another man's wife. And I asked my son in the Bible study, what could David do here to stop these thoughts and chase another man's wife? And my 8-year-old kid looked at me and said, why doesn't he just close the drapes? Ding, ding, ding. Elder father speechless, elder father failing, elder father going, damn, the 8-year-old smarter than I am. But why do so many Jehovah's Witness parents look at this and not feel the failure? And then finally, how do they not spend night and day the rest of their lives worried about the fact that their children that they failed with are in line for a fireball at Armageddon, or are going to be swallowed by an opening earth that's going to suck down all the bad people? And it's all because they failed as parents. Because make no mistake, that is what the governing body teaches is coming for their kids. It has long been fascinating to me that these same parents take no responsibility, at least overtly, at least by observation, that they take no responsibility and think Jehovah is going to have some sort of strange favoritism for their kids who don't want to be in his people, and have some kind of strange mercy for their 1, 2, 3, 5 kids who've all rejected his organization. And this is what's going to happen in Armageddon. What? And you will hear that come out of the mouth of parents whose kids have left their organization or said, this is a cult, see ya. The parents, most of them, not all of them, again, remember, this isn't a blanket across every single breathing soul, but the majority just seem to trudge forward, never thinking about these things. So let's take a look at this dynamic of parenting as a Jehovah's Witness. First, It's important, as we always do, to dig into their nuggets of Holy Spirit known as their literature and the New World Translation to get some answers as to why a Jehovah's Witness parent seems to feel this way. And it's all very intriguing. So, first and foremost, the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses openly teaches parents that they must start brainwashing their children very, very early. Why is there so much pressure on parents? How does the governing body try to grab control of that little baby? Let them answer those questions themselves. I take you first to the Kingdom Ministry of 1988, August 1st, pages 10 through 15, under the aptly titled article, Parents, Reach Your Child's Heart from Infancy. Oh no. Quote, but when should parental training begin? The Bible says that Timothy received his training from infancy, 2 Timothy 3:15, for those following along. Interestingly, brephos, the Greek word here, is often used of an unborn child, as at Luke 1:41 and 44. There, the infant John was said to leap within his mother's womb. But brephos is also used of the newborn Israelite babies whose lives were threatened in Egypt in the time Moses was born. In Timothy's case, the word clearly refers to a mere infant or baby and not simply to a young child. Timothy received instructions from the holy writings from as far back as his memory could reach, from the time when he was only a baby. End quote. And so it begins. The governing body's assault on your child, a baby, an infant. But there's more. I'm going to let them answer this question, how early should you be going after kids as a parent? I'm going to let them answer it themselves. Like I often say, you don't need apostates or websites or anything. Read your own literature if you're a witness listening bravely. The Watchtower Study Edition of August 2013, Parents, Train Your Child from Infancy, says, quote, the book Early Childhood Counts, a programming guide on early childhood care for development, states, the months immediately after birth are critical in terms of brain maturation. During this time, the number of synapses, the connections that allow learning to take place, increase 20-fold. How wise it is, that's the end of the quote from the scientific literature. Back to the governing body, they say in the same paragraph, how wise it is for parents to take advantage of this brief period in their child's mental development to begin the process of implanting spiritual ideas and values in their mind, end quote. Now, if you're thinking, wow, you should be. A baby. A baby. Get them. If you're a parent, get those spiritual ideas and values in their mind. Newsflash, I don't think it's hard to say that it's their spiritual ideas and values. Those are but two references for a parent of Jehovah's Witnesses to obey. They aren't just suggestions, folks. They are commands from the governing body as to when you should start pounding that little baby with their wisdom. In case you didn't catch that, they do to Jehovah's Witness parents. This reference does not mention exposing your baby to cult teachings. No, it didn't say that. It's simply stating how a baby's brain works right after birth. And the governing body lets it be known that the brainwashing should begin then, right then. Get them before their brains are formed. It's flat out sinister. It's sinister. One more to land at home. The Watchtower of 2017, December, pages 18 through 22. And the title says it all. Parents, help your children become wise for salvation. it lands home this doozy. Quote, as a parent, you have the weighty responsibility and privilege to bring up your children in the in the discipline and admonition of Jehovah. As we have seen, that requires not only teaching them what the Bible says, but also helping them to develop conviction about what they learn. Yes, they need a conviction that is so strong that it moves them to dedicate themselves to Jehovah. You remember the two questions, one of which is, do you know you're dedicating yourself to an organization? But I digress back to the quote, and to serve him wholeheartedly. May Jehovah's word, his spirit, and your efforts as a parent help your children to become wise for salvation. End quote. May it begin. May it begin when they are babies. Get after it if you're a parent. Don't spend time Googling and gagaing with your child. Don't spend time just marveling at how two strangers come together, fall in love, and create this incredible human being that no one else could have done and never will be able to do. Don't do that. Get on it, people. Get on it, mom and dad. Teach them about Jehovah and Jehovah's Witnesses. And if you think that's bad, the pressure from the governing body isn't just on the parents. It's also on the kid, on the baby. As the baby grows and the brain begins to develop and it begins to walk and it begins to talk and it begins to have basic questions and it begins to be exposed to more and more of what's going on among Jehovah's Witnesses through the Kingdom Hall, through books that are put in their laps at the Kingdom Hall, through tapes, through Caleb and Sophia videos. It's on the kid. The Watchtower of December 2017, the same article, pages 18 through 22, has this delightful nugget of Holy Spirit. And you can see that they've advanced well past the baby stage and into the preteen teenage with this little illustration. The governing body says this, quote, as a baptized Christian, your relationship with Jehovah is not a family plan, such as some people have for cellular telephone service. On the contrary, you are now responsible for your own salvation, even if you still live under your parents' roof. End quote. Wow. Wow. You're not on the family plan here. Thanks, T-Mobile or AT&T. What an illustration. You have to get your own cell phone service or else you're dead. Got that, kid? Got it. Thank you, governing body. Incredible. Incredible that some moron puts this to print and sends it out to millions of Jehovah's Witnesses. The parents are seeing this and allowing their kid to read it, if you're a witness. The kids reading it in shock and awe because they certainly can relate to being on the cell phone plan. Subject for another day. But by the way, don't enjoy the family plan. You're dead. Get with it. Yeah, you heard it correctly. Jesus, from his throne in the heavens, has apparently at this point compared your very precious life to a cell phone plan. So here are the facts as taught by Jehovah's Witnesses to children and to parents. Children are taught to get baptized as soon as humanly possible or die at Armageddon. Forget the flowers, forget the frosting. Don't try to fluff it up. Don't give me a, well, yeah, or a, well, but. Those don't exist, guys. That's the plan. That's their cell phone plan. Get your own or die at Armageddon. Don't let any Jehovah's Witness tell you different, because they're clearly drowning in cognitive dissonance. Toni Morris, member of the governing body, and certainly easy to see why Jesus handpicked him out of all of mankind, has been droning on about this very subject lately in some of the videos, and it's in millions of pages of print. Jehovah's Witnesses openly teach, and imagine the pressure as a parent Or as a child, they openly teach that an unbaptized child, a little one, a teenager, or even an adult child are doomed at Armageddon. They have no chance for salvation if they are not baptized. And I have to insert here that many Jehovah's Witnesses you talk to, and Jehovah's Witness parents in particular, will come up with some bizarre retort or some bizarre myth that Jehovah reads hearts. That isn't true, Stacy. That isn't true. Lots of unbaptized people will be saved, most especially apparently my own children. No, that is not true. It's right up there with Jehovah's Witness urban myth like Smurfs and angels going out in field service. It's a complete fabricated myth made by some parent who was in terrible pain just thinking about the thought that their kid was doomed to a fireball because they didn't agree with 8 guys in upstate New York. They do not teach that there's any chance for a child or for the pain of their parents to be relieved if they are not a baptized Jehovah's Witness. It is bizarre cognitive dissonance. I've heard it from years. And I openly believe it's how a parent self-soothes what they believe, I should say, is coming in the near future for their precious kids. And they also use this to self-soothe their own sense of guilt for failing miserably as a parent with the easiest disciple they will ever get, their own children, given to them by Jehovah. No door knocking or cart watching or standing involved. If you're a Jehovah's Witness listening, it's in print, folks. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt anyone. But this is what the governing body teaches. It's a fact. There is no syrupy, self-soothing messages about Jehovah reading hearts on your children if they don't become Jehovah's Witnesses. If they're not baptized witnesses, they're not going to live. They will be destroyed at Armageddon. Imagine the pain and the pressure and the stress on a parent, which leads me back to my original questions. Why aren't they worried about this night and day? Why are they not just collapsed in grief at their own failure? This isn't because I want them to be, folks. This is just me asking very valid questions according to the beliefs of Jehovah's Witnesses. If you're a Jehovah's Witness parent listening right now and you've lost your kids to the world, or they didn't become Jehovah's Witnesses, or you're a kid who left Jehovah's Witnesses and your parents aren't talking to you, or you're, which is even more strange as I brought out the outset, you're a kid who has left Jehovah's Witnesses, rejected it, never got baptized, but your parents still associate with you for some reason, because we'll get to that, the loophole. I ask you to pay particular attention to what I'm going to read next. This is straight from the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. This is still accessible in all the printed literature and on their website right now today at the time of this recording. If you believe as a Jehovah's Witness parent that there's some strange loophole or out that Jehovah's going to provide for your kids at Armageddon, I want to present to you what they really say. Follow along as I share their words. First, from the Reasoning from the Scriptures book, now gone, mothballed. What a book it was. But on pages 44 through 49, under the aptly titled section, Armageddon, there is a subsection with a question that asks this, quote, what will happen to young children at Armageddon? Quoting the answer, quote, the Bible does not directly answer that question, and we are not the judges. Gosh, thanks. However, the Bible does show that God views the young children of true Christians as holy. It also reveals that in times past, when God destroyed the wicked, he likewise destroyed their little ones. How encouraging. Thank you. I mean, gosh, we put it in illustrations in the Bible Stories book so a little kid can see babies drowning at Noah's flood. What the? Back to the quote. God does not want anyone to be destroyed. Gee, thanks, Jehovah. So he is having a warning sounded now to benefit both parents and children. Would it not be wise for parents to pursue a course that would result in their children being looked on with favor by God, both now and at Armageddon? End quote. Hint, hint here, folks. Jehovah's Witness children need to be baptized Jehovah's Witnesses. And even then, as you picked up, no guarantees. Would it not be wise if Jehovah was looking on them with favor when Armageddon hits? Unbelievable. And so the pressure begins on a Jehovah's Witness parent and on a child from birth, from the womb. Mom can barely get some rest before the worry begins. The child can barely poop its diaper before the pressure begins. But it gets worse for parents who have failed to bring their children into the umbrella of protection of the Great Eight in upstate New York. I present to you the Watchtower of 1950, November 15th, page 463. Questions from the readers. The question, oh, what a question from the readers is just Hall of Fame material. But the question here was, will children who have not reached the age of accountability and who die at Armageddon have a resurrection? The answer from the 8 guys, quote, children are affected by the course of their parents, and parents are warned that their iniquity is visited on their offspring unto the 3rd and 4th generation. Wow. Exodus 20. Parents are commanded to instruct their children in God's way. See, it's a command. Command, folks. And if in these last days parents refuse to heed the divine instruction and warning, they bring destruction upon themselves and their small children at Armageddon. Parents should remember that their wrong course unfavorably affects their children and may bring their offspring to destruction at Armageddon, just as a right course on the part of parents may put their small children in the way of preservation during Armageddon and opportunity for eternal life in the new world to follow. Folks, holy shit. This is in print. This is in print. It's a command. Teach them to be one of us. If you don't, not only are they going to die, you're going to die too. And even if you teach them in magnificent fashion, they slip in words like, it may put your small children in the way of preservation. There's never a guarantee. The Watchtower of 1968, February 1st, pages 83 and 84 have this to say from the Great Eight in New York. Quote, by all the evidences, this system of things is hastening to its final confrontation with the God of justice at Armageddon. Parents and children who fail to gain the mark on their foreheads, that is, an adequate appreciation of God's moral standard, are sure to suffer. Parents will be held accountable for their children, and children will suffer for the failure of their parents. End quote. So, if you're a Jehovah's Witness parent listening, and we're going to get into this, and you haven't set a perfect example, and you haven't done any of these things, how you feeling? Look, I told you I was going to be all over the board with this one because it's weird. It's weird. On the one hand, you're looking at parents who never followed these commands of the governing body, but still claim to be Jehovah's Witnesses. It's so weird. You're given a disciple by Jehovah. You're supposed to raise them to be his disciple, to be a baptized Jehovah's Witness. You don't do it. How are you feeling today when your parents reject this organization? They typically roll out that, well, Jehovah's the reader of hearts and he's going to save my kids. I don't think so. Not according to what the governing body just said to you in their literature. Where is a parent getting this urban myth mentality, this self-soothing message that they're giving themselves? They're making it up because any parent would. Jehovah's Witness parents are regularly reminded that they can't save their kids at Armageddon, and this creates a stunning dynamic. You would think that Jehovah's Witness parents would be working nonstop, hour after hour, day after day, to teach and guide their children in what it means to be a Jehovah's Witness. You would think that millions of parents would be setting an incredible example throughout their children's life in their home on what it means to be a Jehovah's Witness. You would see it in the parents' speech. You would see it in the parents' actions. In You would see in the parents' schedule of daily Bible study, in teaching those children to go door to door and be like mom and dad, in moral matters like drinking and not over drinking with your kids watching, in matters of entertainment, not watching violent, sexualized, R-rated movies in the home with your kids watching, and how they handle their anger and temper, and how they handle conflict. The list goes on and on in what a parent you think would be doing among Jehovah's Witnesses to raise this little disciple to be one of them and dodge fireballs. But I'm going to say it boldly and bluntly. Like I said, it's a bizarre episode. But the fact remains that many claiming to be Jehovah's Witness parents don't set an example at all. In fact, their entire lives, their conduct, the people they associate with, their friends, their moral behavior, their moods, their actions, their business actions, including a lot of them run businesses and don't pay taxes. Not kidding. They just don't pay them. The way they drive cars, road rage, all of it, all are a terrible example, even by non-Jehovah's Witness people standards. As they examine their time with their minors, their kids at home, they often see that rarely, if ever, looking back, did they study the Bible with them? What? They didn't study the Bible themselves. They didn't teach them how to preach or could even explain anything that they read as parents in the Bible and given to them by the governing body to their own children. And on this subject of the parents' example and the epic failure rate of parents among Jehovah's Witnesses, another nugget to land the point home, the Watchtower of June 15th, 2015, under the aptly titled article, What Makes a Good Parent? The governing body says this, quote, make it your goal to help your children to love God. They will act wisely even when they are not with you. Just as God teaches by example, teach your children to love God by your example, end quote. The example of the parent is critical to the child's becoming a Jehovah's Witness. So if they failed, you've got a whole bunch of Jehovah's Witness parents who just never seem to look in the mirror on this. It's really weird. But it continues. The Awake, the Mental Regulating of Jehovah, November 8th, 2004, says this. Ephesians 6:4 mentions the mental regulating of Jehovah. The original Greek term for the expression mental regulating is translated in some Bibles as mindfulness, counsel, and admonition. These terms all indicate that families must do more than just read the Bible or routinely cover material in a Bible study aid. Parents need to make sure that their children understand the meaning of God's word, the importance of obedience, the love Jehovah has for them, and the protection he offers them, end quote. And all I have to say to these references is, oops. I can only share my own personal observations, my own failures, okay? Be real clear, I'm chucking myself under the bus here. And I've said that before. And what I say now, I've said before. The vast majority of Jehovah's Witnesses, including parents, have never even read the Bible. And they certainly have never studied it thoroughly as grown adults and parents. They don't. And furthermore, that includes elders and ministerial servants who are parents. So these references about setting the example yourself as a parent and studying the Bible with your kids and helping them understand the deep things, folks, the example of parents is oftentimes really bad, especially with fringe Jehovah's Witnesses. And it's hilarious to watch them be fringers. for their entire lives. Then their kids leave home. Then suddenly they get serious about the truth, but never seem to feel guilty about what they did to their kids or didn't do with their kids. It's bizarre. And despite failing their kids by their own horrible example or lazy example, whatever word you want to put to it, by not studying with them, they don't seem to worry about the fact that their kids never got baptized. They aren't Jehovah's Witnesses. They've rejected Jehovah's Witnesses. They live immoral lives by Jehovah's Witness standards, boyfriends, girlfriends, partying, and that they're doomed to a fireball in Armageddon. I've watched some of these same parents have their kids finally leave home, never baptized, and go on to live a worldly free life. By the way, God bless you, go do it. And the parents themselves are still going to the Kingdom Hall like nothing happened. With some of the fathers of these parental units actually being appointed to positions of ministerial servant or elder, despite their complete and utter failure with their own kids. The ready-made disciples they had for 18 years under their roof. But the thing that gets me the most is why these same parents, these mother and fathers, aren't worried every single minute of the day about their kids getting whacked at Armageddon any minute now. You're at meetings, you're in service, but you're not worried about your abject failure as a parent? You failed to study. You failed to set the example for your kids for at least 18 years, and now you're not worried that they're dead at Armageddon? It's unreal. And yes, this is a peek into my weird mind. Might not be a popular episode, but I think it's worth talking about. Why or how do they think that they can go to people's doors and teach strangers how to survive Armageddon, but they didn't put out the same effort with their own kids? I see lots of Jehovah's Witness parents who get their kids to adulthood, then suddenly become servants in the congregation, despite their children never wanting to be a Jehovah's Witness when they grew to be adults. It is bizarre. It says a lot about the servant arrangement and how ridiculous it is that a man or a woman can be a pioneer or a servant once their kids are out of the house because the kids never took to this. But the weird part is that the parents take no responsibility and they don't seem to feel bad about it. Their entire record of failure as a parent is suddenly ignored because they now need someone to work the literature counter or run the sound department. It's comical. I'm sorry, it is comical, it is ironic, and it's worth discussing. But of great importance is how much it's always puzzled me personally that these same parents aren't doing everything in their power to witness to their adult kids, even after they've left them. You'd think they'd be showing up on their door every day. The world's about to blow up. I want to save you, and I failed you, but I got to save you. What's it going to take? That doesn't happen. They're too busy standing next to a cart, staring off into the clouds on some street corner. Am I the only one who thinks this is bizarre? Am I the only one who thinks that this subject, this dynamic, doesn't prove how horrific and damaging this religion is to the human being's brain? Something as natural as parenthood just goes out the window in favor of some bizarre belief system. The animals know how to take care of their kids better than Jehovah's Witness parents often do. And again, not all of them, just many of them. And the real kicker, these same parents, because they failed to get their own kids baptized or to become Jehovah's Witnesses, are the ones that they use what I think might be one of the most epic, and maybe it's the king or queen of all what I'll call spiritual loopholes among Jehovah's Witnesses. They use this, I can only call it a loophole. I don't know what else to call it. They use this spiritual loophole that their kids never got back. They failed. Their example was horrible. They didn't study the Bible themselves, so they didn't study it with their kids. Their kids now grow up. They don't become Jehovah's Witnesses. They never got baptized, which, remember, means they're doomed to destruction. But the parents now use what's some sort of spiritual loophole that goes something like this. Well, my kids aren't Jehovah's Witnesses because they were never baptized. So I'm still going to associate with my kids like nothing's wrong. What? So I ask you, is it me or is that a bit of a problem? How do you, as a parent, not feel absolutely horrible, terrible about associating with the kids that you yourself failed? Or kids that decided, nah, I don't want Jehovah as an organization, nah. Or how the parent's awful example uh, just absolutely caused their kid to look in a completely different direction than the one they're supposed to look in. And the real irony, if you want to get into, and again, is this subject just nothing but pain and negativity? I get it. But is it not a strange, cultural, weird part of Jehovah's Witnesses? Because on the other hand, you're going to find parents who were borderline ridiculous about raising their kids to be Jehovah's Witnesses. They did everything that was required. They were hyper strict, hyper Bible readers. They did everything in their power to teach their kids, to set the example, to have them in service every week, to go to Bethel as a goal, to become a pioneer as a goal. They did everything right according to this organization. And still, those kids in modern time grew up and said, it's a cult. I'm out. And they left anyway. What are those parents typically doing? Those parents are typically obeying this crazy organization and shunning their kids. It's all hypocrisy. You've got bad parents, bad examples, lazy efforts. Kids go sideways. They still associate with them because they never got baptized. Spiritual loophole. You got the mom and dad who worked their ass off to get their kid to be a Jehovah's Witness. The kid still got baptized and leaves, and now they shun them. Spiritual loophole. It's not just comical, it is absolutely tragic. And I said it many times on this show, it's an absolute insult to our intelligence. A bad, lazy Jehovah's Witness parent gets all the benefits. In the end, they get all the benefits. While the one who drove themselves, but the benefits being they get to hang out with their kids still because they never got baptized. Some loophole. Never mind that it's supposed to be spiritual. They've rejected Jehovah and his organization. Baptism shouldn't matter. Why are you still hanging around with them? Why aren't you trying to save them every day? Nope. They just keep hanging around with them. Meanwhile, the parents, the mom and dad who drove themselves to near depression and exhaustion trying to save their kids now must shun them and just carry on in life. And oftentimes those people, I'm going to pull an old Watchtower thingy here. Those people are often sitting in a kingdom hall, those good parents, looking at brother failed father over there, who is now a ministerial servant or elder because he got appointed once the kids left. They're watching him give talks and get privileges. And never mind that I've always been puzzled how that guy feels good about that. Like, I can't figure that out, how he feels good about himself. Am I being harsh? Maybe. But I'd love to see someone refute this. You bombed out as a father and set a terrible example. Now you're a servant. Now the good mom and dad whose kid got baptized and left anyway, they have to sit and listen to you like you're going to teach them something? What? It's just absolute insanity among Jehovah's Witnesses. And I want to get into another subject that I'm sure probably deserves its own full episode. Is this a rant? I guess I should apologize here. I believe this is more of a rant. So bear with me on this episode. I can't even begin or don't know where to begin because it's all so negative. God, this is not a fun episode. It's just negative. I don't know where to begin on the children who were failed by parents in congregation positions. one of, if not the top bizarro example within Jehovah's Witnesses. There is so much to unpack with all of this, and we just don't have the time, so I'll try to keep it brief. But I realize that I have a somewhat unique perspective on this one because I was a former elder. I was an elder of 11 years. I dealt continually with my fellow elders' kids, and let me tell you, it was a mess. A mess. I haven't seen him in years. I was very fond of those kids. They're all grown adults and have families now. Most of them are Jehovah's Witnesses. Most of them are Jehovah's Witnesses to prove the earlier points. But I was very fond of those kids. Their shepherd fathers got some of them to baptism, then they left. Many of them were never baptized and left. But guess what? Their shepherd fathers are still shepherds. Seem to have some trouble dealing with their own sheep, but they're going to help you with your sheep and all the rest of us too. As is the case with many Jehovah's Witness elders and fathers, he's the same guy whose kids rejected Jehovah based on his own abject failure or misses, this guy included, although I'm grateful. His own example, it's that same guy who is now held as an example on how to be a Christian man for the rest of us. To think if we want to go back to being a Jehovah's Witness, we want to turn this terrible negative episode off, and we want to go back to a Kingdom Hall and become a Jehovah's Witness again, you are very likely going to need to approach one of these same elders that failed as a father to raise his own kids to be a JW to seek your own reinstatement. The ironies just keep on rolling with this episode. But I'll tell you, it's my time as an elder, and I was very fond of those kids. Loved them like my own. And frankly, I was young, the youngest elder. I was the guy they came to. So I got to hear a lot of stuff. And I'm not classless enough to share some of that stuff on this show. That would be wrong. Not going to happen. But there is nothing quite like listening to teenagers tell you about their closest friends and about my closest friends, I should say, and my fellow elders in a private setting, including tidbits like, we don't even have a family study, Stacy, or I have never read the Bible, Stacy, or my parents don't even get along. I could keep going on that theme. And trust me, I say that as one of the elders that failed my own son miserably. I was constantly involved in congregation crap when I should have been at home playing with Legos with my own son. So I'm not torturing these elders for the cognitive dissonance they live in. But what I am going to talk about is our own failures. And to continue to serve others as if somehow we could save the lives of everyone else, when apparently we couldn't even do so with our own precious kids. The irony is unbelievable. But look, I don't do it often. I guess I'm going to mention mothers. Some of the mothers aren't off the hook, according to this great organization. And everyone who listens to this and has to past episode knows how, I revere the position of mother, my own mother. I think it's the most important and most difficult job on earth, period. And the mothers and sisters of Jehovah's Witnesses are pressured oftentimes into long hours of field service or pioneering or doing things to the detriment of their own health, their own sanity, and their own children. It happens all the time. And the organization doesn't lay off on the mothers. In the Watchtower of 1992, 1015, October 15th, pages 8 through 13, under the title Jehovah's Loving Family Arrangement, it has this to say about moms. Quote, another way to build up your house is to share in the discipline and training of your children. For example, you can do your part to keep the family study, Bible study regular and upbuilding. Do not let your hand rest when it comes to sharing God's truth with your children at every opportunity. When traveling or simply shopping with them. Hey, honey, can they avocado? Did you know that Jesus gave an illustration on the mustard seed? I mean, this is what mothers are expected to do. But back to the quote, it says, help them to prepare their comments for the meetings and parts on the Theocratic Ministry School and keep an eye on their associations, end quote. I won't even go into how poorly women are treated in Jehovah's Witnesses. I won't go into it. I've done a past episode. But this is just another example of how moms and dads are to be constantly teaching their children the ways of a Jehovah's Witness. Mothers often do much more than fathers. That's the truth. That is the truth. So I guess, God, I'm worn out myself on this subject, and it was more of a rant, wasn't it? Aside from all of this being terribly negative on this subject of parents, their failures, how they self-soothe, how they tell themselves it's all okay, I really want to call out how weird it all is. It's all so weird. How it yet again shows what happens to the minds of a Jehovah's Witness. Good people, moms and dads having a baby, having several. It all shows almost as if they know at some deeper level that it's all BS. So they don't put in the night and day effort to mold their children as they're commanded to. They don't panic when the kids see through the God Squad in upstate New York. They end up saying nah and leave the organization that they don't believe. Or is it denial that the parent may now deal with agonizing nightmares or anxiety about coming destruction on their children and on them for failing? Or that they'll have to step over their child's corpse when the dust settles at Armageddon? Don't fool yourself. I'm not being dramatic here. These are stories I've heard from mothers and fathers. Imagine having a recurring nightmare, thanks to the governing body, that you failed so badly as a father and a mother, that you're living in a delusional state of still serving in the congregation and acting like nothing's wrong, probably to self-soothe. But imagine having reoccurring nightmares that you walk upon your child's body at Armageddon. How frickin' sick is that? But you heard it from their own literature, coupled with something else they may hear at a meeting about birds eating their child's guts. People have anxiety. People start drinking. Parents just act like nothing's wrong. They stop talking to their kids, as I stated. It's all so weird. I feel like the parental position in Jehovah's Witnesses is one of many, but one of the best ones to shed light on how damaging the entire cult is to the human mind. Look, I realize I say that on this podcast a lot, but that's the facts. Not just the incredible pressure to put on parents to successfully raise the next generation of Jehovah's Witnesses, but also the bizarre way it's handled when parents fail, not just by the organization, but by the parents themselves. Not just from the congregation ignoring or not ignoring, but the false, weird things that parents tell themselves, justifying their failure and continuing to associate with their children, despite those children rejecting Jehovah's organization and Jehovah himself, all because they never got in a pool of water. On one hand, raising their children to be Jehovah's Witnesses is the most important thing in the universe, but few Jehovah's Witness parents act like it or live like it. Then when they fail at it, they lean into what they think is some sort of spiritual loophole involving a pool of water and whether they got in or not. And it's not a loophole at all. I mean, it is all so awful. If you feel like this episode means you need to take a shower afterwards, I feel you. I'm right there with you. So let's close this nasty thing out. Not a lot of laughs had on this one. I want to point out something in conclusion that just bears it bears repeating. It bears putting a big spotlight on. Is now a good time to point out that apparently Jehovah God himself is an epic failure as a parent? Let's review. I mean, he couldn't handle his own angel, his own kid that went sideways, and it's even allowed that kid to wreak unbelievable misery on all his other kids. Not to mention, Jehovah has quite a record as a parent. Let's review. First, he makes Adam and Eve perfect, or does he? But despite being in the perfect environment, he himself can't steer Adam and Eve, his kids, the right way, which damages all the other kids in his family from that point forward. Then he can't help those sinful, imperfect kids that came after, so lets his other kids, the demons, have sex with his other human daughters. Then he drowns everyone because of it. Then he has a nation of kids that never minds him or obeys him, so they get taken into captivity and slaughtered. Then he sends his favorite son, his favorite kid, to help all the other kids, but he can't do that in real terms. So his other kids have his favorite son killed. So now, as time goes on, he picks 8 of his other favorite kids in upstate New York to tell the rest of us he is once again going to commit mass genocide against all the other kids that didn't obey him. Where the hell does this end? There you go. Father of the Year material right there. In the end, isn't this all due to Jehovah himself being a really bad parent? But hey, you human Jehovah's Witness parents, raise your kids to love me above everything else. Just listen. Negative stuff, but it has to be talked about. I'm not trying to be funny here. It's quite the opposite. Again, there's so much pain around this subject. But that is what the governing body teaches 8 million plus Jehovah's Witnesses about Jehovah, about parenting, and about what they should be doing. So in conclusion, to those Jehovah's Witness parents or children or adult children that may be listening, I do have a final message for you. None of this matters. None of it. Please know it doesn't matter. It's all BS. Please, please continue to have a loving, warm relationship with your children. If you're a Jehovah's Witness parent that failed and they never got baptized, please keep doing it. Whether they left Jehovah's Witnesses or not, please keep your families together. Should the day come when you, as a on-the-fence Jehovah's Witness that is brave enough to listen to this rant for the last hour, that you realize what you've been a part of, the stress and the worry you inflicted on yourself and your kids, you will have anger that I can't even define. I deal with mine to this day. But my final message is this: nothing should separate families, ever. Even our own failure as parents, even our own decisions as kids. Nothing should separate a family. Please know that. Please don't let the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses kidnap your children or your relationships. I'm now going to go take a shower. This was exhausting. It was a rant. Let's start out 2023 on fire. Here we go, folks. I'd love to hear your comments on some of the bizarre loopholes, the bizarre things parents ignore, the bizarre failures of parents, the decisions of kids. Family is everything. I'd love to hear your comments. I look forward to them. Folks, we're 109 years into the last days. I hope you had a happy new year by the time this drops. I'm looking forward to continue to do this. Thank you so, so much to the comments, DMs, and others. If I'd missed you, please know it wasn't on purpose. I'm just really bad at social media. I want to thank you wherever you may be over the next week as we bring in the new year. Be safe and please be well. We'll see you soon.